What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here with another video today. Today, we're bringing you guys our Georgia preview prediction video. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Help me reach that goal of 1,400 subs by the end of August. Check out the description for links to our shop, podcast website, Patreon page, and our college football roundup channel. New content coming out very soon over there as the season is right around the corner. 4 days from today, we will have college football. I know everybody's excited for that. We'll kick off with Florida State, Georgia Tech in Ireland for week 0. But today we're focused on the Georgia Bulldogs in this upcoming season. They have a big one, and not this coming Saturday, but the next. They'll open up the season against Clemson in Atlanta. But when you look at this team, obviously very talented team, probably – I don't know. I have them as the second best roster behind Ohio State. I think some of that has to do with just the receivers they have. Don't get me wrong, they have good receivers, but they don't have elite guys like Ohio State does. But I think Georgia is the standards for college football for sure, considering the national titles they have. And with Nick Saban gone and retired, Georgia's definitely the team that you ride into the SEC championship and the college football playoff. Without a doubt. They do have a little bit of a trickier schedule this year than they've, usually had in past years. But it's still one of those things that it mainly comes down to if these other teams turn out to be what we think they are, how tough Georgia's schedule will actually be, because they have some tough games on paper. But by the time we get there, if these teams aren't what we think they are, the schedule won't be as tough. You look at this team offensively, they bring back Carson Beck at quarterback. That was huge. They bring back 4 out of 5 offensive line starters. Oscar Delp, the tight end, is back. Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell back at receiver. Also bring in Colby Young, the transfer from Miami. And then you got Arian Smith as well. He is just a speedster. You have him in there. They did have Ra Thomas, but he was dismissed from the team earlier this offseason after, I believe it was like whatever it was the second offense to it as well. So he's gone off the team. Defensively for them, D-line looks to be in good shape, should be better than last year with Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, Michael Williams, some big names down there on the D line, even though Michael Williams is kind of transitioning from more of the defensive line to more like a stand-up kind of outside linebacker, more of like your NFL type edge rusher type of player. The defensive backs seem to be in pretty good hands, headlined by Dalen Everett and Malachi Starks. That is the position where they have the least amount of depth, though, is in that back end. You have great guys starting, but then behind them you still have talented guys, but a lot of them are young freshmen. So that is the weakest point, I would say, of this Georgia defense is that secondary. If they get injured right now, definitely no weakness on this defense. So a good team, a good roster overall for Georgia. Like I said, I think it's the second best roster in the entire country. When you just look at the guys they have. Last year, they went 13-1 overall, 8-0 in the SEC. Only loss came to Alabama in the SEC championship, 27-24. But yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into this year's schedule for Georgia and just run down what we have them going. So week 1, they start out, they get Clemson in Atlanta, basically a home game. I have this game as a win for Georgia. I think this is a game that Clemson can win, especially when you just look at the defense that they have. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I think it'll be a little bit more higher scoring than the last time these two teams played, and Georgia won on a pick six, 10-3. But when I look this year, I think it'll be a little bit more scoring from both sides. But it's a game I don't think will be super high scoring when we look at the two defenses, and especially when we factor in Clemson's offensive struggles. And that's really the only the reason why I can't pick Clemson to win this game. Obviously, it's a possibility because we don't know what that offense is going to look like this year. But with Georgia, you don't know as a Clemson fan if Cade's going to come out and throw 3 or 4 interceptions in this game or if Clemson's going to hold on to the football. You do know that Georgia will hold on to the football. And a guy I completely forgot to mention, Trevor Etienne in the backfield, going to be a dog for them this year, transferred in from Florida. But Carson Beck is not going to come out and throw 3 interceptions in this game. Georgia is going to give you 1 turnover at most. So if Clemson protects the football, holds on to the ball, is able to sustain some drives, and let that defense play with rest, then you have a chance of Clemson pulling off the upset. But as of right now, you can't predict any of that. What you do know is that Georgia is going to be an elite team playing at a high level week 1. And so Georgia gets the win there. Then they get Tennessee Tech. No discussion really needed on that one. That's a win. And they go on the road to Kentucky. This will be 7:30 game on ABC, a night game. I have this game as a win. We've seen it in years past. Kentucky they're a solid team, but they don't have the talent it takes to compete with Georgia. They lost last year 51-13 to them. I think Kentucky can be a little bit more competitive this year, maybe make that score a little bit closer, but still not going to be by much of a margin. I have Georgia winning this one pretty easily, somewhere around 30-point win. Then week 4, Georgia goes on the road to Alabama. I have this game as a win. I think that they'll have the Crimson Tide's number this year. That's really been their kryptonite these last few seasons. I believe like in the last 3 years, Georgia has 2 losses, and both of them are to Bama. But I don't see that happening this year, not with all the change at Alabama, the new pieces coming in and out. I expect Georgia to be the better football team in this game. They were honestly the better football team last year too, just lost the game. And I expect them to be able to go into Bryant-Denny and get the win. Now, it's not going to be easy at all. It'll still be it's going to be tough, but I do trust Georgia to come out of there with the win. And then they get Auburn at home. I have this game as a win. Also, real quick, Georgia's coming off a bye week before that Alabama game as well. But then October 5th, they get Auburn. I have this game down as a win. I don't see it being as close as it was last year when it was 27-20. I don't see that happening this year. I think that Georgia wins by a little bit more of a wider margin. I think that Georgia's the better football team. Obviously, I think last year Auburn just caught Georgia kind of sleepwalking and lagging around. And I don't see that happening again this year. I think this will be a pretty easy win for the Bulldogs. Then they get Mississippi State at home. This is a win. Mississippi State is going to be one of the worst teams in the SEC this year, if not the worst team. I think the only team really below them is going to be Vanderbilt. I think Arkansas and South Carolina might be around there with them, maybe even Kentucky. But I think other than Vanderbilt, Mississippi State is going to be the worst team in the SEC. Shouldn't be a problem for Georgia. Then this is going to be a tough game. They got to go on the road to Texas. Man, this is going to be a tough one, but I do have this game as a win for Georgia. I think both these offenses are pretty similar in terms of talent. I think Georgia's offense can be able to match up good against that Texas defense, and that's the difference for me in the game is that I trust Georgia's defense in the last 4 minutes of the game in a one-possession game to get a stop more than I trust the Texas defense. I just think that Georgia's going to have an easier time at that. So I have the Bulldogs getting a win there. Then they get Florida in Jacksonville. This is going to be a win. This could be a trickier game. I don't know if you win by 23 like you did last year, 43-20, but I still think you win. I do think Florida will be a much more improved team. And to me, it really just depends on how Florida's season goes before this game. They may be undefeated or have one loss coming in. It's probably going to be a harder football game. But we don't really know what we're going to get out of Florida this year. And so I have this game as a win for the Bulldogs. And then they got to go on the road at Ole Miss. I think this game is going to be a lot closer than it was last year. Don't see Georgia winning this one 52-17. But I still see Georgia winning this football game. I do think that Ole Miss defense has gotten better and is going to be improved this year. The offense is still going to be elite, but it's the same thing with Texas. I trust Georgia's defense a lot more, and Texas has a better defense than Ole Miss's defense as well. So I think I still don't see Ole Miss being able to stop Georgia as much. And I think that Georgia won't have a problem at all getting the stops. Then next up, Georgia faces Tennessee at home. I have this game as a win. Tennessee, another one of those teams. They've been good, but they haven't really been able to compete with Georgia last year. Lost 38-10 at home against them. And I think that Georgia gets the win at home this year against the Volunteers. I think Tennessee could be a better team than they were last year, an improved team somewhat, but I still don't see them being able to hang with the Bulldogs. Then they get UMass. This is going to be a win. Not really much discussion needed on that one. Then you close out the season with the rivalry game against the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech. I have this game as a win. This could be a little bit of a tricky one. It's a rivalry game. Georgia Tech is going to be an improved team. They're going to be a solid squad this year. Could see them making a bowl game. This could be the game that they have to win to get a bowl game potentially. So I don't think it'll be as easy as a win as past years, although, I see it similar to last year where Georgia beat them 31-23, 8-point win. I see it something about like that, between 7 and 14 points. I think it'll be a closer game for a little bit, but I think about midway through the third quarter, Georgia will kind of pull away a little bit. It's one of those games I see it being the score being close, but it's one of those games if you're watching it, you're like, this game isn't as close as the score shows. One of those kind of games. The one I always point back to is North Carolina Notre Dame a few years ago at Notre Dame. It was like the score is a 10-point game, but it feels like if you've watched the game and didn't see the score, it felt like Notre Dame was up by 40. So that's kind of how I see that one playing out. So overall, I have Georgia going 12-0, undefeated in conference and on the regular season. I see a few potential losses on there. Obviously, at Texas is going to be one. At Ole Miss could potentially be one. At Bama could be one. Week 1 against Clemson could be one. So there's 4 teams that you could say are on the schedule that could potentially beat Georgia. None of them are toss-up games other than maybe the game at Texas. But I don't see I don't see Georgia falling to any of them. So yeah, I have them 12-0, 8-0 in the SEC. But that's going to wrap up today's video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Help me reach that goal of 1,400 subs by the end of August. Appreciate everybody tuning in today, and we'll be back with another prediction.